Welcome to Shamrock Reddit Stories, entitled Relatives Edition, where an entitled woman raids her newly deceased sister's house and tries to steal all that she can find. This one is from Beautiful Ad 8543, and it's called My Entitled Stepbrother. So, for some background, I'm 35 years old and my stepbrother is 20. He was 10 when my dad and stepmom got married, and to be clear, my stepmom is a very nice woman, and from what I've heard, his dad is nice enough. Maybe stepbrother was swapped at the hospital by gremlins or something. Anyway, stepbrother has been looking at universities and settled on a university in a city close to me and texted me the following. Keep in mind, he does have my number, but has rarely, if ever, texted me. Stepbrother. Hi, OP. I've been looking at universities and chose one close to where you live due to tuition cost and the fact that you live there. So, if you could prepare a room for me, that would be great. Thanks. Here's a list of my requirements. Vegan. Must not eat meat around me. Would prefer it if it wasn't in the home at all. Non-binary pansexual with a lean towards men. Please have no women over when I'm around. Build me a gaming PC at a fair price. Help me study. Live in the city, 'cause I don't drive. I honestly began laughing my butt off at how absurd this list was. Aside from the fact that I live in a rural area, own my own home, and have no intention of moving, he also must think that I have piles of spare computer parts lying around. I replied back a day later. Me. Yeah, your demands are dumb, and in no way in heck would I let you move in with me, much less respect any of your demands, so you can move your butt into the dorms like every other freshman. Stepbrother. But we're family. We're supposed to help one another out. Me. No. We happen to be arbitrarily related because your mom and my dad got married. That has everything to do with them and nothing to do with me. Stepbrother. Well, can I talk to your landlord? Me. I own my home. I am the landlord. I didn't bother mentioning my girlfriend to him because he obviously knows about her, although he probably doesn't know that she moved in with me. It was about this time my stepbrother gave up, called me an a-hole, and other insults that weren't even worth mentioning. I decided to meme him a bit and replied back after his rant. Me. Okay, Zoomer. Stepbrother. Oh, F you. The entitlement is strong with this one. Good job shutting him down, OP. This one is from Lamina Ninja, and it's called My Sister Died, so I'm going to take away the most valuable things from her husband's and son's house when they're not there to stop me. A few years ago, my boyfriend's mom died suddenly. Nobody was prepared. He's now my boyfriend, but at the time we were really close friends. He was devastated and could barely function. He called me and asked me to come over and help him with the funeral preparations. He and his dad had to go out and buy a coffin and all the other things necessary for the funeral. At the same time, they expected a visit from their relatives from another city. So I came over and he and his dad went out to buy the stuff they needed. I remained in their house, cleaning around and preparing a meal for their relatives who were expected to arrive the next day. At one moment, somebody rang at the door. I opened it and saw my boyfriend's aunt and uncle, sister and brother-in-law of the deceased. I didn't even have time to offer my condolences. As soon as the aunt saw me, she started yelling at me. Who the F are you? And what the heck are you doing here? I told her that I was there to help my friend and his father around the house and with funeral preparations. She knew me. She knew who I was, but obviously she pretended not to know who I was. She told me to get out of the house. I didn't want to make any waves, so I went out, sat on the porch, and had a few smokes. 30 or 45 minutes later, the aunt and uncle came out of the house, carrying some bags and boxes in their hands. They came empty-handed, to make things clear. I immediately realized that they were nothing but vultures, but I decided to keep things as civil as possible for the sake of my friend, his dad, and his deceased mom. So I told them that they should wait for my friend and his dad to come back home. I was as polite as possible in that awkward moment. I even said it would mean a lot to them if they could see you in this horrible time in their lives. But the sister of the deceased started yelling at me again. "Who the F do you think you are? This is my sister's house." Again, I took a deep breath and replied as calmly as I could. "Yes, I know, but this is also my friend's and his dad's house. And until they're back, I am responsible for everything that happens here in their absence." She kept yelling and fuming. I tried to reason with her husband and told him, "Imagine my situation. When they're back, they'd think it was me who stole these things. So please wait for their return. Pretty please." But the harpy wouldn't shut up or let him speak. She kept screaming and yelling, throwing all kinds of insults and threats to my face. Now, I am not a person who'd remain calm or silent, but I wasn't on my territory, and the woman I knew and loved had just passed away. I really didn't want to bicker with her sister. I just wanted to calm the situation down before my friend and his dad returned. Of course, my friend and his dad were both devastated, and this was the last thing they needed to see or hear. So I let her scream at me, but remained adamant. "I will not let you leave with these things until the two of them return. I am not going to be accused of stealing, and it is definitely best for all of us. Please calm down and wait for their return. They should come back any minute now." Luckily, I am a tall and tough woman, a former volleyball player and swimmer. I am 6 feet tall, and I was standing between them and the steps that led down to the front yard. At the moment, I felt like Gandalf when he faced Balrog and told him, "You shall not pass." And given my temper, I believe they knew that I meant business. So she couldn't get down from the porch, and all that she could do was yell. 2 neighbors from next door heard her screaming and came to see what was going on, just as I was on the verge of exploding and calling the cops or even my friend. The aunt then, screamingly, explained to them that a stranger wouldn't let her leave and that the deceased was her sister, and so on. This bought me some time, and eventually my friend and his dad returned home and found us all bickering on their porch. The aunt and uncle had to leave all the stuff behind and go home empty-handed. I had a splitting headache, and I can't even imagine how my friend and his dad felt. Later, we looked at the content of the bags and boxes they were trying to take away. All of the most valuable items from the house were packed there, including my friend's expensive laptop. He's a graphic designer, and that's his workplace. Also, jewelry his father inherited from his mother and grandmother, an expensive camera, the deceased woman's very expensive iPhone, and several other valuable items. The aunt and uncle didn't show up at the funeral. I promise you, if they had shown up at the funeral, I would have barked at them and chased them away. I was furious. I don't remember ever being that furious as I was that day. How in the world could someone be such a vulture? It was her sister. I think I felt more sorry for the loss of that woman than her sister did. Okay, that was just creepy. The deceased is not even buried yet, and the vulture sister is trying to steal her sister's belongings and things that don't even belong to her deceased sister. The nerve of some people. I'm not sure that I would have stood up to those monsters as well as OP did. Maybe if I loved the family as much as OP, I could have. I don't know. This one is from Indigo Wolf, and it's called Entitled Prankster Uncle Gets the Last Laugh. When I was little and playing house, I had decided what names I would give my own children. I was going to have a boy and name him Nathaniel James. Then, 2 years later, I would have twin girls, Cassandra Janelle and Amanda Rochelle. I was very determined about this. Okay, hold on. We're going off on a tangent backstory about my Uncle George, not his real name. Now, Uncle George was a troublemaker first class. He passed away before I was old enough to remember him. My daddy would tell me stories of his hijinks. For example, he used to hang with his buddies in a farmer's back field. The farmer gave them permission as long as they cleaned up after themselves. Then the farmer sold the beloved field to a school. In retaliation, George captured one of the farmer's cows and spray-painted obscenities all over it. The prank made it into the local newspaper. Once the school started to build on the field, he would sneak in at night and dump their building supplies into the deep ravine nearby. Dad estimates that they had to pay nearly triple in construction costs. Another thing he did was spiking the coffee in the teacher's lounge with LSD. It was the 60s. So that's my Uncle George in a nutshell. Last relevant thing about my uncle is that he had teased my father when I was still a fetus that he was going to name me George if I was a boy. He wanted someone to be named after him. My dad said no, and George just gave him a little attitude and said, "We'll see." Flash forward to adult me getting pregnant. I told everyone my planned name. I'd rub my belly and talk to my baby. I'd call him Nathaniel. During my actual labor, the guy who gave me the pain drugs in my epidural was a moron noob and turned the drip up way too high. I got high as a kite and actually had my contractions just stop until the doctor called the guy back in and chewed him out, so he fixed it. My dad told me later that before my son was actually born, and during the time that I was heavily medicated, Dad swore he could hear my Uncle George laughing. He just thought maybe he was glad the first grandbaby was being born or something like that. No, we found out later why he was laughing. I swear to this day I do not remember putting the name George on the birth certificate. Seamus and I aren't sure if this uncle actually qualifies as an entitled relative, but he sure was a prankster. Cute little story, though. That's it for this one, folks. Until next time, may the wind always be at your back. Blah, blah, blah.